Shadows of Violence, The Yorkshire Ripper's Deadly Rehearsal, Part 2 of 5. Welcome back to Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's true crime podcast, where we peel back the layers of history's darkest mysteries. Today we're diving into the second chapter of a 5-part series on the Yorkshire Ripper, Peter Sutcliffe, a name that still sends shivers through northern England. In Part 1, we trace the early flickers of a monster in the making, from a troubled boy in Bingley to the chilling first swing of violence in 1969. But now, the shadows deepen. This is Part 2, Shadows of Violence, the Yorkshire Ripper's Deadly Rehearsal, where we step in the crucible of 1975, a year when a predator sharpened his claws, tested his nerve, and left a trail of survivors teetering on the edge of death. Picture it. Quiet streets and rural lanes turned into hunting grounds. A hammer raised in the dark, a knife glinting with intent. Before the Yorkshire Ripper claimed his first kill, he rehearsed his brutality on 4 women, each attack a brutal step closer to murder. From the alleys of Keighley to the fields of Silsden, we'll unravel the savage assaults on Rogulskyj, Smelt, Tracy Browne, and Marcella Claxton. Survivors whose lives were shattered, and whose stories scream of a killer finding his rhythm. How did a sock filled with stone in 1969 evolve into a hammer and knife nightmare? What drove Sutcliffe from petty rage to calculated violence, just months shy of his first fatal strike? Lock your doors, brace yourself, and join us as we walk the blood-streaked path of a predator's ascent. This is Ontario Cold Cases, and trust me, the tension's only building. You won't want to miss a single heartbeat of what's coming next. In Part 2, we look in the Yorkshire Ripper's descent into violent attacks, leading up to the first murder. Hello, I'm Jay Nichol of Nichol Investigations, and this is Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's true crime podcast. Ontario Cold Cases is a gripping true crime podcast that shines a light on unsolved murders, disappearances, and forgotten crimes from across the province and the world. With meticulous research, compelling storytelling, and a commitment to historical accuracy, we bring you the real stories of victims, investigators, and suspects, stories that demand to be heard. Each week, we take you deep into the world of true crime with a packed schedule of episodes. Tuesdays, historical true crime cases, exploring infamous and obscure crimes from history. Wednesdays, the Mick and Mac Mysteries, a thrilling fictional detective series set in 1950s Toronto. Thursdays, World Cold Case Thursday, investigating unsolved cases from around the globe. Sundays, Ontario Cold Cases, the latest episode uncovering an unsolved mystery from Ontario. From high-profile crimes that shock the nation to little-known cases waiting for justice, we uncover the truth, one case at a time. Join us as we explore the dark corners of history and mystery, where every clue could lead to answers and every case deserves a second look. Subscribe now wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts and never miss an episode of Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's true crime podcast. The incident, September 29, 1969. Location, Bradford's Red Light District, West Yorkshire. Victim, an unnamed sex worker. Her identity was never publicly disclosed, likely due to the nature of the crime and the era's attitudes towards such cases. The details? At age 23, Peter Sutcliffe was already drifting through a series of manual jobs, having worked as a grave digger and factory worker, while living in Bingley with his parents. On the evening of September 29, 1969, he ventured into Bradford, a nearby city known for its industrial grit and, at the time, a visible sex trade. Targeting a sex worker, he employed a ruse to isolate her, luring her to a secluded spot away from prying eyes. His weapons of choice was rudimentary but telling. A sock filled with a stone, likely a makeshift kosh, which he used to strike her on the head. The attack was interrupted when a passerby, possibly alerted by the victim's cries or the commotion, approached, prompting Sutcliffe to flee the scene. The woman survived, though the extent of her injuries remains unclear in public records, as the incident didn't initially garner significant police attention beyond a basic report. In context, this assault occurred 6 years before his first confirmed murder, Wilma McCann, in 1975, during a period when Sutcliffe was still finding his footing as an adult. He was unmarried. He would meet Sonia Sersma in 1966, but not marry her until 1974, living with his domineering father and gentle mother, and reportedly nursing grievances against women, later claiming a sex worker had cheated him out of money in the mid-1960s, an incident he cited as a trigger for his hatred. The choice of a sex worker as his target suggests his animosity was already festering, though his method lacked the lethal precision he'd later develop. The arrest, October 6, 1969. The circumstances, just days later, on October 6, 1969, Sutcliffe was back in Bradford's red light district, either emboldened or reckless, when police spotted him acting suspiciously. He was found in possession of a hammer and a screwdriver, tools he claimed were for repairing a car. This explanation, while flimsy, was accepted at face value by the authorities. Charged with going equipped for theft under the Theft Act of 1968, a minor offense implying intent to commit burglary or theft, he appeared in court, paid a £25 fine, equivalent to roughly £450 today adjusted for inflation, and walked free. No connection was made to the earlier assault, and the incident faded into obscurity until his 1981 confession resurfaced it as a critical missed clue. The significance of the tools? The hammer and screwdriver are chilling harbingers of his later modus operandi. By 1975, these become his signature weapons. The hammer to incapacitate victims of blows to the head, a screwdriver and knife to inflict fatal stab wounds. Their presence in 1969 suggests he was already carrying implements suited for violence, not just theft, though police at the time lacked the context to see the threat. The broader context and analysis? Sutcliffe's life in 1969. His age and mindset? At 23, Sutcliffe was transitioning from adolescence to adulthood, phase often marked by identity formation. His shyness and social isolation, compounded by bullying in childhood, may have fueled a growing resentment, particularly toward women he perceived as vulnerable or morally beneath him, sex workers being an early focus. His employment? He had recently left his grave digging job from 1967 to 1969 at Bingley Cemetery, where he developed a fascination with death and was likely working odd factory jobs. This instability might have heightened his sense of aimlessness or entitlement to lash out. His personal life? His relationship with Sonia Sersma was in its early stages, but they weren't yet living together. The domestic stability of marriage was years away, leaving him unmoored and free to explore darker impulses. Why this assault matters? This is the first step in escalation. The 1969 attack bridges his juvenile delinquency, examples motorbike theft in 1966, and his later violent assaults. Striking with a sock and stone shows premeditation. He prepared a weapon, but also hesitation as he fled when challenged, unlike the brazeness of his later killings. Targeting sex workers? His choice aligns with his later claim of a mission the Cleanse Society of Prostitutes. Though in 1969 it's more likely a mix of opportunity, red light districts were accessible, and personal grudge. His misogyny was taking shape, possibly rooted in humiliation from an earlier encounter. The missed opportunity? The October 6 arrest is a glaring what-if moment. Had police linked the hammer and screwdriver to the September 29th assault, or probed his suspicious behavior more deeply, Sutcliffe's trajectory might have been halted. Instead, the minor charge and fine reinforced his ability to evade serious consequences, emboldening him for the future. Sutcliffe's later reflections? After his 1981 arrest, Sutcliffe admitted to the 1969 assault during police interrogations, framing it as an early expression of his hatred for sex workers. He claimed it was impulsive, sparked by anger, but the premeditated nature of carrying a weapon contradicts this. His confession added weight to the incident respectively, though he offered little detail beyond confirming the basics, leaving historians and criminologists to piece together its implications. Additional insights? The victim's fate. The sex worker's survival and lack of public identification reflect the area's dismissive attitude towards such victims. No follow-up investigation tied her assault to a Sutcliffe until decades later, and she likely never knew how close she came to being his first murder victim. The police perspective in 1969, Bradford police were not on high alert for serial offenders. The assault was treated as a one-off, and the subsequent arrest as unrelated petty crime. The absence of forensic databases or profiling meant no dots were connected, stark contrast to the massive manhunt that would follow in the 1970s. The psychological angle? Criminologists suggest this attack was a rehearsal, testing his capacity for violence without fully committing to murder. The interruption may have taught him to refine his approach, leading to the ambush tactics, striking from behind, seen in 1975. The 1969 assault and arrest encapsulate Peter Sutcliffe's nascent transformation from a troubled young man into the Yorkshire Ripper. On September 29th, he took his first violent swing at a victim, driven by a mix of rage and curiosity, only to retreat when confronted. On October 6, he carried the tools of his future trade, hammer and screwdriver, yet slipped through the cracks with a slap on the wrist. This missed opportunity haunts the narrative, quiet prelude to the horror that erupted 6 years later with Wilma McCann's murder. It's a stark reminder of how small oversights can let a monster grow unchecked. Peter Sutcliffe's transition to violent assaults in 1975 marks a critical escalation in his criminal evolution, shifting from impulsive, non-lethal acts like his 1969 assault on a sex worker to deliberate attempts at murder with a refined method. This phase, spanning several attacks before his first confirmed kill, reveals a predator testing his capacity for violence, honing his tactics, and expanding his target pool. Next is a detailed examination of the first of these incidents, the attack on Anna Rogulskyj on July 5, 1975. I'll break it down with as much granularity as possible, drawing from historical accounts, survivor testimony, and Sutcliffe's later confessions, while contextualizing it within his broader trajectory. Up next, the attack on Anna Rogulskyj. The incident, an attack on Anna Rogulskyj. The date, July 5th, 1975. Location, Keighley, West Yorkshire, England. The victim, Anna Rogulskyj, is age 36. The outcome? Survived with serious injuries. By mid-1975, Peter Sutcliffe was 29 years old. Married to Sonia Sersma for less than a year, since August 10th, 1974, and working as a lorry driver for T and W.H. Clark, a haulage firm in Bradford. This job gave him mobility across West Yorkshire's, access to red light districts, and a flexible schedule. Perfect for scouting victims. His earlier criminality, voyeurism, petty theft, and the 1969 assault had been sporadic, but the intervening years saw a simmering aggression, possibly fueled by his troubled marriage. Sonia's schizophrenia and miscarriages strained their relationship, and a growing misogyny he later tied to perceived slights from women. The attack on Anna Rogulskyj was the first known violent assault of 1975, occurring just months before his first murder, signaling a leap toward lethality. The attack? Keighley, a small industrial town 10 miles northwest of Bradford, was a familiar area for Sutcliffe, close to his childhood home in Bingley. On the evening of July 5th, 1975, a warm Saturday night, Anna Rogulskyj, a 36-year-old woman of Ukrainian descent, was walking near her home. Described as a working-class woman with a strong personality, Anna had recently separated from her partner and was reportedly out socializing, though specifics of her movements that night are sparse. The assault took place in a quiet alleyway off Oakworth Road, a dimly lit spot near residential terraces, ideal for an ambush. A sequence of events. The approach. Sutcliffe spotted Anna alone and initiated contact, likely under a pretext, possibly offering assistance or asking for directions, a tactic he refined in later attacks. His unassuming demeanor, 5 feet 8 inches tall, slight build, dark hair and beard, made him appearing non-threatening, a key advantage. The initial strike, once isolated, he produced a ball-peen hammer, a small heavy tool with a rounded head commonly used by mechanics or builders, struck her in the back of the head. Survivor accounts and medical reports indicated he hit her 3 times in rapid succession, aiming to incapacitate her instantly. The blows fractured her skull, causing severe trauma. The secondary attack, as Anna collapsed, unconscious or dazed, Sutcliffe pulled out a knife, likely a small blade or Stanley knife, and slashed her abdomen. The cut was deep, not immediately fatal, suggesting intent to kill rather than mere injury. He lifted her clothing during this phase, exposing her stomach, a detail hinting at a sexual or ritualistic element, though he did not sexually assault her beyond this. Interruption? Before he could inflict further damage, a neighbor, alerted by Anna's cries or the sound of the struggle, shouted from a nearby window or yard. Startled, Sutcliffe abandoned his victim and fled into the night, disappearing before help arrived. Anna was found bleeding and unconscious by passerbys or the neighbor who called for emergency services. The injuries and aftermath? Anna sustained a fractured skull, brain trauma, and a significant abdominal wound. She was rushed to a local hospital where surgeons performed emergency surgery to relieve pressure on her brain and repair the stomach laceration. She survived, but suffered lasting effects. Memory loss, partial paralysis, psychological trauma that left her unable to live independently. She later moved into sheltered housing and rarely spoke publicly about the attack. The police treated the incident as a serious assault, but didn't initially link it to a serial offender. Keighley CID, the Criminal Investigation Department, investigated, taking Anne's description of her attacker, dark-haired, bearded, local accent, but with no suspect identified, the case stalled. Sutcliffe's perspective? After his 1981 arrest, Sutcliffe confessed to the attack on Anna Rogulskyj during police interrogations, providing chilling insight into his mindset. He claimed he targeted her impulsively after spotting her alone, driven by a vague anger toward women he associated with immorality. Though Anna was not a sex worker, unlike some later victims. He admitted the hammer blows were meant to kill, and the knife slash was an attempt to finish her off. But the interruption forced him to flee. He expressed no remorse, describing it as a job half done, a cold reflection of his growing detachment. The significance in his evolution? The first hammer attack. This was Sutcliffe's earliest known use of a hammer, a weapon he carried consistently in future assaults. Unlike the sock and stone of 1969, the hammer offered precision and lethality, marking a shift to a more calculated approach. Its presence suggests premeditation. He was now traveling armed, ready to strike. Dual weaponry? The addition of a knife introduced a secondary phase to his attacks. Incapacitation, followed by mutilation or fatal wounding. This would become his signature MO, perfected in murders like Wilma McCann's in October 1975, where he hammered and stabbed repeatedly. Targeting flexibility? Anna was not a sex worker, unlike his 1969 victim or later targets like Marcella Claxton. Her selection, possibly opportunistic, shows his misogyny wasn't yet rigidly fixed on prostitutes, hinting at a broader hatred taking root. The escape under pressure, fleeing when interrupted, mirrors his 1969 assault, indicating he was still cautious and not fully committed to ensuring death. This hesitancy would fade as he gained confidence, rarely abandoning victims alive in later years. The misconnection? Police didn't link this attack to subsequent ones in 1975. Example, Olive Smelt and Tracy Browne, due to poor coordination and the absence of a serial killer profile at the time. It was only post-arrest that Anna's case was retroactively tied to the Yorkshire Ripper. Context within 1975? The attack on Anna Rogulskyj occurred 3 months before Sutcliffe's first murder, Wilma McCann, on October 30th, 1975, positioning it as a pivotal trial run. In the intervening months, he'd strike again. Olive Smelt on August 15th and Tracy Browne on August 27th, each time refining his method and growing bolder. By July 1975, the West Yorkshire police had no inkling of the storm brewing. The region was still reeling from economic decline, not serial violence. Anna's survival, while a testament to her resilience, was a stroke of luck that delayed recognition of a pattern. The legacy? Anna Rogulskyj's ordeal is often overshadowed by Sutcliffe's later murders, but it's a cornerstone in understanding his transition. Her survival provided one of the earliest descriptions of the Ripper. Dark hair, beard, local accent, yet it went unheeded until too late. She lived out her life quietly, a forgotten victim of a monster still finding his footing. Her story a haunting prelude to the terror that followed. The attack on Anna Rogulskyj on July 5, 1975 was Peter Sutcliffe's first documented step into the realm of attempted murder. A brutal, interrupted act that laid the groundwork for his killing spree. With a hammer to crush and a knife to carve, he tested his resolve, only to retreat when challenged. It's a stark snapshot of a predator in transition, teetering on the edge of the abyss he'd soon plunge into fully. The attack on Olive Smelt on August 15, 1975, represents a second documented assault on Peter Sutcliffe's violent escalation that year, occurring just 6 weeks after his attempt on Anna Rogulskyj and a mere 2 months before his first murder. This incident further refined his predatory tactics and solidified the hammer as his weapon of choice, while his escape under pressure again highlighted his early caution. Next is a detailed breakdown of the assault on Olive Smelt, rich with contact survivor details and its significance in Sutcliffe's transition to a serial killer, based on historical records, police reports, and his later confessions. Up next, the attack on Olive Smelt. The incident, an attack on Olive Smelt. The date, August 15th, 1975. Location, Halifax, West Yorkshire, England. The victim, Olive Smelt, age 46. The outcome, survived with permanent injuries. By August 1975, Peter Sutcliffe, now 29, was entrenched in his role as a lorry driver, a job that afforded him the freedom to roam West Yorkshire's towns and cities. Married to Sonia Sersma for a year, his personal life was strained by her mental health struggles and their inability to have children, potentially feeding his growing aggression. The attack on Anna Rogulskyj in July had been a near miss. He'd intended to kill, but fled when interrupted, leaving him unsatisfied and emboldened to strike again. Halifax, a textile town 8 miles southwest of Bradford, became the stage for his next assault, expanding his geographic range and testing his nerve in a new setting. The attack? Olive Smelt, a 46-year-old married woman and mother, lived in Halifax and worked as a cleaner. Known for her sociable nature, she was out in the evening of August 15th, a Friday night, likely enjoying a drink with friends at a local pub. Around 11:30 p.m., she was walking home along a quiet residential street, Boothtown Road, near the Claremont area. The street was lined with terraced houses, typical of working-class Halifax, and poorly lit, offering Sutcliffe cover for an ambush. It was a warm summer night. The town was winding down, leaving few witnesses. The sequence of events. The approach. Sutcliffe, driving through Halifax, likely in his white Ford Corsair or a work lorry, spotted Olive walking alone. Unlike with Anna Rogulskyj, where he initiated conversation, this attack was a silent strike from behind, a tactical shift to minimize resistance. His slight build and unremarkable appearance, dark hair, beard, dark clothing, allowed him to blend into the night. The initial strike, armed with his ball-peen hammer, Sutcliffe crept up behind Olive and delivered 2 powerful blows to the back of her head. The first strike likely dazed her, and the second sent her crashing on the pavement, fracturing her skull. The force was intended to incapacitate instantly, a lesson learned from Anna's survival. The secondary attack. As Olive lay helpless, Sutcliffe produced a knife, possibly the same blade used on Anna, and slashed her lower back. The wound was deep, cutting through muscle but not aimed at vital organs, suggesting he was still experimenting with how to kill. He lifted her skirt slightly, exposing the injury, a detail echoing the ritualistic exposure in Anna's case, though he stopped short of further mutilation or sexual assault. The interruption? Before he could escalate, headlights flashed as a car approached, possibly a late-night driver or a resident returning home. Sudden light and noise spooked Sutcliffe, who abandoned Olive where she fell and bolted into the shadows, likely retreating to his vehicle parked nearby. A passerby, or the driver, discovered her moments later, bloodied and unconscious, and alerted emergency services. The injuries and aftermath? Olive suffered a fractured skull, severe brain trauma, and a deep laceration to her lower back. Rushed to Halifax General Hospital, she underwent emergency surgery to relieve brain swelling and stitch her wounds. She survived, but endured permanent consequences. Partial paralysis on her left side, memory impairment, and chronic pain, ending her ability to work or live independently. Her husband and family cared for her in the years that followed, though she rarely spoke publicly about the attack, retreating into a private life marked by trauma. Halifax police launched an investigation, classifying it as a vicious assault. Olive provided a vague description. Dark-haired man, local accent, but her injuries clouded her memory. With no immediate suspect, the case joined Anna Rogulskyj as an unsolved violent crime, unlinked to a broader pattern at the time. Sutcliffe's perspective? In his 1981 confession, Sutcliffe recalled the attack on Olive Smelt with detached precision. He claimed he targeted her spontaneously after seeing her alone, driven by the same vague anger he cited for Anna, though Olive, a cleaner and mother, didn't fit his later prostitute-only narrative. He admitted the hammer blows were meant to kill, and the knife slash was an attempt to ensure death. But the car's interruption forced him to flee. He expressed frustration at her survival, calling it unfinished business, a sign his confidence was growing alongside his ruthlessness. The significance in his evolution? His refined ambush tactic. Unlike Anna, where he engaged his victim first, Sutcliffe struck Olive from behind without warning, a method he perfected in later murders, example, Wilma McCann. This shift reduced the risk of resistance or recognition, showing he was learning from past interruptions. The hammer mastery? The 2 blows to Olive's head were more forceful in focus than Anna's 3, suggesting he was calibrating the hammer's lethality. It became his primary tool for instant incapacitation, a hallmark of his MO. The knife use? The slash to Olive's lower back, while not fatal, reinforced his dual weapon approach. Hammer to stun, knife to kill or mutilate. Its placement differed from Anna's abdominal wound, indicating he was still testing how to inflict maximum damage. The geographic expansion. Moving from Keighley to Halifax broadened his hunting ground beyond Bradford's orbit, leveraging his lorry driver mobility. This adaptability would later span Leeds, Manchester, and Huddersfield. Interrupted again? Fleeing at the car's approach mirrors Anna's case, showing he remained cautious, willing to abandon a kill rather than risk capture. This hesitancy would soon fade as he grew bolder. The victim profile? Olive, a working-class woman walking home, wasn't a sex worker, further evidencing his early flexibility in targeting. His misogyny was broadening, not yet fixated on prostitutes as he later claimed. The context within 1975? The attack on Olive Smelt came 41 days after Anna Rogulskyj, and just 12 days before his next assault on Tracy Browne on August 27th. This quick succession, 3 attacks in under 2 months, marks 1975 as a rapid escalation phase. West Yorkshire was still oblivious to a serial threat. Halifax police treated Olive's case as an isolated incident, missing the emerging pattern. Meanwhile, Sutcliffe was refining his craft, each survival fueling his need to perfect the kill, a need fulfilled with Wilma McCann's murder on October 30th. The legacy of this? Olive Smelt's survival left her a silent casualty of Sutcliffe's early rampage, her life irrevocably altered by a fleeting encounter. Her description, dark-haired, bearded assailant, matched Anna's, yet police failed to connect the dots, a precursor to the investigative blunders that would define the Yorkshire Ripper case. Her story, though less publicized than the murders, this critical thread in understanding how Sutcliffe transitioned from tentative predator to relentless killer. The assault on Olive Smelt on August 15th, 1975 was a brutal step forward in Peter Sutcliffe's descent. A silent strike from behind, a hammer to crush, a knife to wound, and a hasty retreat when challenged. It built on Anna Rogulskyj's attack, sharpening his tactics and deepening his resolve, setting the stage for the continuing escalation. Up next, the attack on Tracy Browne. The attack on Tracy Browne. Date, August 27th, 1975. Location, Silsden, West Yorkshire, England. Victim, Tracy Browne, age 14. The outcome, survived with serious injuries. By late August 1975, Peter Sutcliffe was accelerating his violent spree, having attacked Anna Rogulskyj on July 5th and Olive Smelt on August 15th. At 29, he was a married lorry driver, navigating West Yorkshire's roads with increasing boldness. The 6-week gap between Anna and Olive had shrunk to just 12 days, before his next assault signaling a rapid escalation in frequency and confidence. His prior attacks had been interrupted, leaving survivors. Frustration he'd soon overcome with his first murder in October. The attack on Tracy Browne, a 14-year-old schoolgirl, stands out for its rural setting and young victim, further broadening his target profile and testing his nerve in a quieter, less urban environment. The attack. The setting, Silsden, a small market town 14 miles northwest of Bradford and 4 miles from Keighley, where Anna was attacked, was a stark contrast to the industrial bustle of Halifax or Leeds. On August 27, 1975, a Wednesday evening, Tracy Browne, a bright and active 14-year-old, was walking home with her twin sister Terry along the lonely country lane known as Woodside Road. The sisters had been visiting a friend and decided to take a shortcut through the rural outskirts, a decision that placed them in Sutcliffe's path. It was around 8:30 p.m., dusk settling in, with fields and hedgerows lining the narrow road. Isolated, dark, and eerily quiet. The sequence of events, the approach. Sutcliffe, likely driving his white Ford Corsair or work vehicle, spotted the two girls walking side by side. He parked ahead out of sight and approached on foot carrying his ball-peen hammer. Unlike his silent ambush on Olive Smelt, he engaged Tracy and Terry briefly, asking for directions, a ruse to close the distance and assess his moment. His unassuming appearance, 5'8", dark hair, beard, and local accent disarmed them. Tracy later recalled him seeming ordinary and friendly. The initial strike. As his sisters answered, Sutcliffe singled out Tracy, possibly because she was closer or responded more. He suddenly swung his hammer, striking her in the back of the head with ferocious force. The first blow knocked her down, and he followed with 4 more rapid strikes, 5 in total, crushing her skull. Terry screamed and froze, too terrified to intervene, as Tracy collapsed in the dirt, blood pooling around her head. No secondary attack. Unlike Anna and Olive, Sutcliffe didn't use a knife or inflict further wounds. The sheer number of hammer blows, double what he'd used on Olive, suggests he aimed to kill quickly and decisively, perhaps assuming the damage was fatal. He spared Terry, possibly due to time constraints or her lack of immediate threat. The escape, headlights, or distant sound accounts vary, prompted Sutcliffe to flee. Tracy's twin sister Terry ran for help, flagging down a passing car sprinting to a nearby house. Sutcliffe vanished into the night, leaving Tracy motionless on the lane. A motorist or neighbor found her and called an ambulance. Rushing her to hospital as Terry recounted the horror to police. The injuries and aftermath: Tracy sustained 5 skull fractures, with severe brain trauma that left her unconscious for days. Miraculously, her thick hair cushioned some of the blows, and swift medical intervention at Airedale General Hospital saved her life. Surgeons operated to relieve brain pressure, and she spent weeks recovering. She suffered permanent effects: headaches, memory issues, and psychological scars, though she retained enough to recall to provide a detailed description. Dark-haired, bearded man, Yorkshire accent, about 5 feet 8 inches tall. She returned to school eventually, but carried the trauma into adulthood. Silsden police treated the attack as a near murder, interviewing Terry, the key witness, and Tracy once she regained consciousness. Her description matched Anna's and Olive's, but with no forensic evidence, example fingerprints or DNA, which was not used at the time, of course, the case remained unsolved. It was filed as a standalone crime, not yet linked to the emerging pattern. Sutcliffe's perspective. Sutcliffe confessed to attacking Tracy Browne after his 1981 arrest, identifying her as one of his earliest victims. He claimed he targeted her impulsively while driving through Silsden, intending to kill both sisters, but focusing on Tracy when the opportunity arose. He admitted the 5 hammer blows were meant to ensure death, expressing surprise at her survival, crediting her thick hair in a chillingly casual tone. He offered no clear motive beyond a generalized anger at women, and his decision to leave Terry unharmed remains unexplained, possibly a pragmatic choice to avoid prolonging the scene. The significance in his evolution: increased brutality. The 5 hammer blows, more than Anna's 3 or Olive's 2, show a marked increase in ferocity, reflecting his frustration with prior survivors. He was determined to kill, not just injure, a shift cemented 2 months later with Wilma McCann's murder. The hammer focus, skipping the knife this time, suggests he was testing the hammer's standalone lethality, relying on sheer force rather than a secondary weapon. This experimentation would soon evolve into his consistent MO of hammer and knife combos. The youngest victim? At 14, Tracy was far younger than Anna, who was 36, or Olive, who was 46, and not a sex worker, further expanding his target range. This opportunistic strike on a schoolgirl hints at a misogyny unbound by age or profession, contradicting his later prostitute mission claim. The rural setting? Attacking in Silsden's countryside, rather than urban Keighley or Halifax, shows his willingness to strike wherever opportunity arose, leveraging his mobility as a driver. It also increased isolation, reducing immediate interruptions, though he still fled when risked exposure. The twin dynamic. Targeting Tracy while sparing Terry is a rare glimpse into his decision-making. He may have prioritized speed over completeness, a caution that faded as he grew bolder in later attacks without witnesses. The near miss: Tracy's survival, like Anna's and Olive's, was a fluke, her hair and quick rescue thwarting his intent. This string of failures likely fueled his resolve to refine his method, ensuring no survivors in his next attempt. Context within 1975. The attack on Tracy Browne came 12 days after Olive Smelt, 64 days before Wilma McCann's murder on October 30th, placing it in a frenetic summer of escalation. 3 assaults in 8 weeks, July 5th, August 15th, August 27th, show Sutcliffe was striking with growing frequency. Each incident a rehearsal for the murders ahead. West Yorkshire police remain oblivious to a serial threat, treating Tracy's case as a local crime, despite her description matching earlier victims. The rural isolation of Silsden delayed broader alarm, leaving Sutcliffe free to refine his craft. The legacy? Tracy Browne's survival made her a key early witness. Her vivid description, corroborated by Terry, adding to the profile of a dark-haired, bearded assailant that police overlooked until 1981. She and her sister lived with the trauma, with Tracy occasionally speaking out post-arrest to highlight her ordeal's impact. Her case underscores how close Sutcliffe came to killing before perfecting his method, a haunting near miss in his deadly evolution. The assault on Tracy Browne on August 27, 1975, was a savage leap in Peter Sutcliffe's transition to violence. 5 hammer blows raining down on a 14-year-old in a quiet lane, a twin sister's screams echoing into the dust. It was his most brutal attempt yet. A predator shedding caution for ferocity, only to flee once more. The attack on Marcella Claxton on May 9, 1976, marks a final documented assault in Peter Sutcliffe's transition to violent attacks before fully committing to his murder spree, though it occurs after his initial killings had already begun. Position between his early murders, Wilma McCann in October 1975 and Emily Jackson in January 1976, his next killing, Irene Richardson, in February 1977. This incident reflects a temporary reversion to non-lethal violence, yet with the same savage intent. It underscores his evolving confidence and brutality, even as he left a survivor whose description could have tightened the net around him. Next is a detailed exploration of the assault on Marcella Claxton, pieced together from survival accounts, police records, and Sutcliffe's confessions. The incident, an attack on Marcella Claxton. The date, May 9th, 1976. Location, Leeds, West Yorkshire, England. Victim, Marcella Claxton, age 20. The outcome, survived with severe injuries and miscarriage. By May 1976, Peter Sutcliffe, now 29, was a seasoned predator. He had murdered Wilma McCann, October 30th, 1975, and Emily Jackson, January 20th, 1976, establishing his lethal hammer and knife method. Married to Sonia Sersman and working as a lorry driver, his job continued to provide cover and mobility across West Yorkshire. The 9-month gap since his last non-fatal assault on Tracy Browne on August 27th, 1975, had seen him cross into murder. But Marcella Claxton's case shows he hadn't fully abandoned leaving victims alive, perhaps due to circumstance or interrupted intent. Leeds, a bustling industrial city, and later a central hub of his killing spree, offered red light districts ripe for his predatory instincts, setting the stage for this attack. The attack, the setting, Marcella Claxton, a 20-year-old sex worker, was 4 months pregnant at the time of the assault. On the night of May 9th, 1976, a Sunday, she was working in Chapeltown, a Leeds neighborhood known for its vibrant multicultural community and active sex trade. Around midnight, she was near Roundhay Park, a large green space on the city's northern edge, when Sutcliffe approached. The area was a mix of quiet residential streets and wooded patches, providing cover for an attack despite its proximity to urban life. The sequence of events: the approach. Sutcliffe, driving his white Ford Corsair or a similar vehicle, pulled up beside Marcella and offered her £5 for sex, a common transaction in Chapeltown's red light scene. She agreed, climbed into his car, and directed him to a secluded spot near Soldiers Field, a grassy area within Roundhay Park. This premeditated move to isolate her mirrors his earlier luring tactics, example Anna Rogulskyj, now adapted to his vehicular mobility. The initial strike. Once parked, Sutcliffe asked Marcella to step out of the car, claiming he needed to get comfortable. As she exited and turned away, he grabbed his ball-peen hammer from the vehicle and struck her in the back of the head. The blow, delivered with force home from prior attacks, fractured her skull, knocking her to the ground. Unlike Tracy Browne, he limited it to one strike, possibly assuming it was enough given his recent successes in killing. No secondary attack. Surprisingly, Sutcliffe didn't use a knife or inflict additional wounds, a departure from his murders of Wilma and Emily, where stabbings followed hammer blows. The single strike suggests he believed it fatal, or intended to flee quickly. He left her clothing undisturbed, with no mutilation or exposure, a further break from his emerging ritualistic pattern. Escape and survival. After the blow, Sutcliffe dumped Marcella's body over a low fence in the bushes, assuming she was dead or dying, and drove off. However, she regained consciousness shortly after, dazed and bleeding. Crawling from the undergrowth, she staggered to a nearby phone box and called for help around 1 a.m. Emergency services found her slumped but alive, rushing her to Leeds General Infirmary. The injuries and aftermath. Marcella suffered a fractured skull and severe concussion, requiring surgery to remove bone fragments and relieve brain swelling. The trauma triggered a miscarriage of her 4-month pregnancy, a devastating loss she later attributed to the attack. She endured lasting effects, headaches, memory lapses, and emotional distress, though she recovered enough to provide a detailed description to police. A man with dark hair, a beard, a Yorkshire accent, about 5 feet 8 inches tall, driving a white car. Leeds police investigated the assault as a violent crime, suspecting a link to the murders of Wilma McCann and Emily Jackson, due to the hammer and Chapeltown location. Marcella's description matched earlier survivors of Anna, Olive, and Tracy, but the absence of a knife and her survival muddled connections. Her case was noted but not prioritized, buried in the growing pile of unsolved attacks as police focused on the murder spree. Sutcliffe's perspective. In his 1981 confession, Sutcliffe confirmed attacking Marcella Claxton, recalling her as a sex worker he targeted in Leeds. He claimed he struck her with a hammer to kill her, intending to get rid of her as part of his self-proclaimed mission against prostitutes, a narrative he leaned on post-arrest, though it didn't fully align with his broader victim pool. He admitted dumping her over the fence, believing she was dead, and expressed mild surprise at her survival, attributing it to his haste in leaving the scene. He offered no explanation for skipping the knife, suggesting it was a spontaneous omission rather than a deliberate shift. The significance in his evolution? Post-murder reversion. Occurring after 2 murders, this attack is an anomaly, a return to non-lethal violence despite his proven ability to kill. It may reflect overconfidence, assuming one blow sufficed, or an interrupted plan, possibly due to nearby activity in Roundhay Park. The hammer reliance. The single hammer strike reinforces its centrality to his MO, though its failure to kill Marcella highlights his occasional miscalculation, unlike the multiple blows on Tracy Browne or the fatal precision on Wilma and Emily. The sex worker focus? Marcella's profession aligns with his later stated mission, contrasting with earlier survivors, Anna, Olive, and Tracy, who weren't prostitutes. This suggests his misogyny was crystallizing around a specific group, though not exclusively. The vehicle use? Luring Marcella into his car before driving to a secluded spot shows a tactical evolution, leveraging his lorry driver mobility to isolate victims, a method he'd refine in murders like Helen Ritka in 1978. It reduced immediate risk compared to street ambushes. Survival impact? Marcella's detailed description. Dark hair, beard, white car. Added to the growing profile of the attacker. Yet police failed to act decisively. Her survival, like others, was a missed chance to close in before a spree escalated further. The pregnancy loss, the miscarriage adds a tragic layer, amplifying the attack's brutality. Sutcliffe likely didn't know she was pregnant, but it underscores the indiscriminate harm he inflicted. The context within 1976. The attack on Marcella Claxton fell between Emily Jackson's murder of January 20th, 1976, and Irene Richardson's February 5th, 1977. A 9-month gap in killings punctuated by this assault. It's possible Sutcliffe was lying low after Emily's murder drew attention to Leeds, or personal factors. Perhaps Sonia's health slowed his pace. By May 1976, West Yorkshire police were beginning to suspect a serial killer, but their focus on murdered sex workers, Wilma and Emily, sidelined Marcella's case as a lesser assault, another investigative oversight. Meanwhile, Sutcliffe was gaining notoriety, though not yet as a Yorkshire Ripper. The legacy? Marcella Claxton's survival made her a vital early witness. Her description reinforcing a consistent suspect profile that police ignored until 1981. She later spoke publicly, notably in interviews after Sutcliffe's arrest, expressing anger at the miscarriage and the system's failure to stop him sooner. Her case bridges his early tentative attacks and his peak killing spree, a stark reminder of how close he came to adding her to his murder tally. The assault on Marcella Claxton on May 9, 1976, was a brutal outlier in Peter Sutcliffe's transition. A hammer strike meant to kill, a body dumped in the bushes, and a survivor left to crawl from the wreckage. It blends his early caution with his growing ruthlessness, a chilling interlude between murders. This marks the end of his documented non-fatal assaults. Next, his spree turns unrelentingly lethal. And that's where we leave part 2 of our 5-part series on the Yorkshire Ripper. Peter Sutcliffe, standing on the precipice of murder, his hammer dripping with the blood of Rehearsal. In Shadows of Violence, we walk the dark path of 1975, from the alleys of Keighley to the fields of Silsden, tracing the brutal assaults on Anna Rogulskyj, Olive Smelt, Tracy Browne, and Marcella Claxton. 4 women who survived a predator's savage practice runs. Each strike a license, each escape a spark fueling his descent. From a sock and stone in 1969 to a hammer knife nightmare by 1976, Sutcliffe was no longer just testing the waters. He was ready to drown northern England in terror. But the story's far from over. In part 3, we cross the threshold into his first kill, Wilma McCann's murder in October 1975, and the relentless spree that follows. The shadows are lifting, and the Yorkshire Ripper's true horror is about to unfold. You won't want to miss a second of this series, so make sure you subscribed to Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast. We're available wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your go-to app. Just hit that subscribe button so you're locked in for what's next. Now here's your call to action. If these tales of survival and savagery gripped you, share this episode with a fellow true crime obsessive. Let's keep the conversation alive. Drop us a comment or review. Tell us what you think of Sutcliffe's chilling evolution, and join us as we unravel the rest of this nightmare. Stay safe. Keep those doors locked. And we'll see you back here for part 3. This is Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast. Because every case deserves answers, and every victim deserves justice.